you for coming out this evening. My name is Lamont Cole. For those of you who don't know, I'm the superintendent of schools for East Ebrpss Parish School System. And tonight we want to discuss a few things. I want to give you a layout of how the meeting is going to proceed. We're going to spend the first 15 minutes talking about our budget as we get ready to go into the budget process. And then we'll spend the next 40 minutes talking about some planned changes we have relative to our realignment part 2. And then the last 10 minutes we'll take a few questions. So again, thank you so much for being here. As we get ready to talk about the budget process, last year we had one of the more transparent budget processes that we had in our school system, but it still wasn't enough in terms of making sure everyone was aware of A, the process, and then B, gathering input from the community and the stakeholders to ensure we are spending the money the right way. So at this time, for about the next 10 or 12 minutes, because we're going to have more meetings strictly about the budget, I'm going to ask our CFO to come forward and share some information about our budget process. Let's give it up to Ms. Kelly O'Page.
Providing the highest quality instructional support to them so that they can grow up and be wonderful members of society. So how do we get there? Well, first of all, we got to figure out how many children we believe are going to be in each and every one of our schools. And then we need to know, what do they need at that school? Are they special education? Do they need gifted programs? English learners? Economically disadvantaged? What is the makeup of our students at that school? Because that's very important, because we have to provide different resources to different schools to provide for those students. It is the superintendent's wish that every child receives everything they need to be successful. So once we have that, we determine the funding, and then it goes to board approval. So last year, the community was wonderful to us. They provided so much feedback, and what they said was they wanted the school staff to have higher compensations. They wanted their students to be safe and secure in their classrooms, and they wanted facilities to be improved. And that is what we have done this year. We are working diligently with the salary schedule to improve our salaries. We have put up fencing. We are putting more security guards in the system so that our children and our staff feel safe at their school. And we are constantly improving our facilities, improving the looks of them, making sure that they're clean and safe for all of our kids. So this time it's your turn. I need to hear what you think is most important in your community for your students and your families. So these are the items that you can rank. And if you click on this QR code, we'll go directly to one of our surveys that I am tracking for everything once we start the budget process. I need to know what you think is most important. Not only that, there's an option for other. So if it's not on here, that doesn't mean you can't tell us. We want you to tell us. We need your feedback because, again, your students and your families are our community, and we are here to serve.
Thank you very much, Kelly. So please, you have that packet of information. so that when we have our next conversation about budget, you will have had some input using the survey information, and then when we have the meetings, we can have those conversations. First, I want to talk a little bit about what's in the packet. You were given the previous presentation, which was about budget. You have the school realignment presentation, and I wanted to share some contextual information, historical information with you about how our school system ended up in the current condition that it's in. So I went all the way back to when the school system began in 1880 and gave you a timeline of events that had significant impact on our school system. So tonight I want to talk a little bit about some discussions we were having and where this all began when I became superintendent. When I became superintendent and we moved around the school system, we started talking to our teachers, we started talking to our families, our students, trying to understand what it is they wanted from their public school system. And as we looked around, as we listened, as we learned, we began making plans. But in addition to making those plans, we had to look at where we were in terms of how our schools were operating. In addition to looking at our schools, we had to listen to those at the State Department of Education who have the authority and the responsibility to make adjustments in public school systems when they feel that school systems are not doing the best for their students. And so let me be very clear. The State Department of Education has said to me directly, if you don't make some changes, if you don't stop operating business as usual, we will step in and take over ownership of your school buildings. We will step in and run some of your schools, which is what led me and led us as a board and as a school system to start thinking about how can we do things differently. We have operated as a parish-wide school system since 1880. The reality of the situation is we're no longer a parish-wide school system. There are 3 other independent school districts in this parish, and one working diligently to create its own district right now. We have Central, we have Zachary, and we have Baker. So if you look at the article that I gave you, it gives you a timeline and it talks about some decisions that were made by Judge Parker back in 1982, which had a negative impact on the school system when we began forced busing. The reason why I give you some historical context is because I want you to understand that I don't just make these decisions in a vacuum. I read, I study, I try to understand some of what has happened in the past so we can chart a path forward that will have a profound impact on our students. And that is what brings us to realignment phase 2. Last year we hosted 6 different community conversations. We had a conversation with students, we had one with parents, we had one with teachers, we had one at Broadmoor Elementary, we had one at Capitol Elementary, and then we had another meeting at Magnolia Woods Elementary. All of those meetings, all 6, were very well attended by stakeholders. And we listened, and we learned. And we learned a great deal about what it is, those who chose to come out, and then we had a survey, and folks filled out the survey, and we listened to what people said they wanted from their school system. And that began our realignment process. And we used 3 major criteria to determine how we were going to proceed with our realignment process. Number 1 was the age of the facility. How old was the school building, or is the school building? Number 2, capacity. How many students are attending said school? And then number 3, the academic performance. How was the school functioning? If the school was in horrible condition, low enrollment, and was doing horribly academically, we made the tough decision to close it. Let me say that again. If we had a building that was in deplorable condition, enrollment was low, performance was low, we made a decision to close it because that particular facility, that particular school, despite any of the efforts of my predecessors, was not working for kids. So last year we closed 9 schools. 4 of them were charter schools, and the other 5 were district-run schools. So we didn't just stick to our district-run schools. We looked at all of our schools across the district, and we made some tough decisions. And let me be very clear, those decisions were not made without a significant level of scrutiny, without a significant level of conversations, without a significant level of pushback as a result, because nobody wants their school closed. But when schools aren't working for kids, it is my responsibility along with the board to make the decisions that we believe are going to be best for kids. Now, this particular school year, I was told by our state superintendent that there are 2 schools in this particular area that he has his eye on that he will take over if we don't begin to do something different. So we began looking at the 6 schools in the area to determine where do we need to go. Before we did that, we looked at realignment phase 1 to determine whether or not what we implemented was working for kids. Out of our discussions, we learned from the community and with our staff that number 1, our community is severely concerned about early childhood. Too many of our students are showing up in kindergarten not ready for school. Far too many of our young people are showing up in kindergarten not ready for school. So we created foundational learning centers for pre-K to 2, where the focus would be on working with young students, preparing them with foundational learning skills so that when they show up for kindergarten, they are kindergarten ready. And when they show up for kindergarten, if they're not ready, we would have the human capital on those campuses to provide the necessary support. So we were able to create a foundation learning center at Marydale Elementary, and we were able to create one at Marydale Elementary. And I'm happy to report those schools are doing extremely well. The beginning of the year, the middle of the year data is better this year than it was in previous years. And so we're happy to report that. Now this is what we've heard from you. Through the course of the realignment and the community conversations, we've heard a great amount of feedback from all stakeholders and what it is that you all wanted us to prioritize in terms of what we do with our schools. And so we made some tough decisions, and we created some programming in our schools that we believe has helped our students be better in terms of their academic productivity and their engagement. This is our reality in this area of town. This is our reality. There are 3 D schools, 1 F, and 2 C's. Now, for me, it's unacceptable. For me, it's unacceptable. And when I looked at the data, I looked at the program, and I looked at what is going on in all of our schools in this area for the past 10 years, not much has changed. Not much has changed. And if we're going to continue to do the same thing over and over and over and expect a different result, that is the very definition of insanity. So we have to think about how do we do something different that is going to work for kids. And for me, that begins with having the conversations with parents and understanding what is it they want for their children, and then how do we create systems that allow for what you want for your kids to work best for them so that A, they're prepared for kindergarten, B, they're prepared for middle school, C, they are prepared for high school, and then they're prepared for the world. They're beyond their post-pre-K-12 experience. Our mission statement that can be found on our website that the board and staff worked so hard on during our retreat for our strategic plan is very simple: educating all students for success. Now, all of us in here know success looks very different for us as individuals. It looks very different. What looks like success to me may not look the same for Captain Walker. We're in 2 very different fields. But success, nonetheless, is the attainment of one's goal. And we know that all of our children have goals they want to reach in their life, and our job as a school system is to equip them with the necessary resources they need to have access to opportunity, and then those opportunities to create experiences that we believe are going to put them on a path to being successful. And that is where we are in this realignment of phase 2. Now, realignment phase one, we created foundational learning centers. That was early childhood. Then we looked at our secondary schools, middle and high schools. Looked at the data to determine what was working and what wasn't working. What we learned is that all over the United States of America, Louisiana has the earliest start times in the country. And Baton Rouge has some of the earliest start times in the state. And so in looking at the data, one of the biggest impacts we saw that was hurting our schools negatively was that students weren't showing up for school on time, and then some of them weren't showing up at all. And so we made the bold move to adjust start times at 2 of our high schools. What you have in your packet is all of the data from the preliminary reports for how our school start time initiative is working at those schools. Now let me be very clear. This is the first year. We're not even complete. Some of the data is great, some of it is and some of it is not good. But the reality of the situation is we've not had an entire year to evaluate. The other side of that is during the conversations last year and during my very public presentation, I said to everyone we would do phase one, and then we would come back and do phase two, and then we would come back and continue to phase in changes across the district until we felt like we had a very different school system than the one I entered into, but that we had one that was going to make sure it was putting kids first and creating opportunities for all of them. And so here we are, and this is our reality. So when we look at the schools, the 6 schools in the area, we look at the 5-year trends, and the data has shown us that there is a need for intervention because performance and attendance have been declining over time. Performance and attendance has been declining over time. One of the things that is very, very startling to me, and all of you have this information in your packet, so if I move too fast and you want me to go back, don't hesitate to ask. However, you do have it if you want to review it. This is the most interesting data to me. But even more interesting than this data, we have more elementary school students than we have high school students. What does that tell us? That the elementary school students who live in this community are not attending our middle and high school. We have more elementary school students who live in the area, but something is happening where they are not choosing our middle and our high school as their school of choice. But when I go back and I look at the data and I see that our elementary schools are performing a little bit better than our middle and high school, it's a no-brainer to understand why families aren't choosing our middle and our high school in this area for their academic learning experience. Now that's nobody's fault, but I take full responsibility for making the adjustments we need to make in an effort to make sure that A, all of our students, no matter what school they are in, have the resources and the support they need. But B, if you live near a school, you should be able to attend that school near your home, if in fact it is an option for you. So we want to create systems that we know are going to work for kids. We want to create systems that we know are going to work for kids. Park Forest Middle School is very near and dear to my heart because I had the awesome opportunity to serve as principal there from 2008 to 2011. And Mr. Smith was the principal there from 2005 to 2008. So I came right behind him. And when I was the principal at Park Forest Middle, we had 1,200 students. Today, Park Forest Middle only has 472 students. Something has happened since the time I was principal there in 2011 to now where the enrollment has declined. The families who live in this community are not choosing Park Forest Middle School as a school of choice. When I was the principal at Park Forest Middle, the majority of the students at Park Forest Middle attended Bel Air High School. So in 2011, Bel Air High School had well over 1,100 students. So what has happened since 2011? Some will say the opening of charter schools. Some will say other issues had an impact on this area, what I will tell you is that we have not done the best job we can to ensure that every family who attends our schools in this area had the right type of support and the right type of programming in an effort to be successful. So we made some changes. My plan is to make a recommendation to the board next month about the 6 schools in the area. A few seconds ago talked about start times. There was more data that talks about the physical and health and safety, the mental health and behavior, and the academic performance. Again, the report you have from Prismatic is going to echo the research. The research tells us when middle and high school students do not have to attend school as early, it has an overwhelming positive impact on their physical health, their mental health, and their academic performance. And so if we know that at our schools, where school students have to be dropped off by 6:50 in the morning, they are acting out or exhibiting behavior that we consider to be undesirable, then we have to think about what do we need to do in order to put them in a better position. And what you will see in the report is that attendance is better in many cases, academic performance is better in many cases, and when we look at the qualitative and quantitative data, you will see that there are some who appreciate it and there are some who don't. I do want to make mention of this because I have listened to a number of our staff. I've heard a lot of what they've had to say about the decisions that we're making in terms of later school start times and them not being able to attend and make it to their afternoon appointments. But I want to say this. We have 5,800 employees in our school system. 70% of our school system, roughly 4,150 of our employees, don't get off work until after 3 o'clock. 41, over 70%. And let me explain why. The majority of our students, the majority of our teachers are elementary school teachers. And they don't get off work until about 3-4. So they've never had an opportunity to make it to after school, after work meetings or after work appointments. They've always had to figure it out. And then the rest of the employee workforce in the school system, with the exception of a few, work till 4:30. So I do understand our middle and high school teachers when they say they're not going to have an opportunity to make it to after school appointments, but the majority of our workforce in our school system does not. And so I have to think about what's best for kids and how we're going to put our young people in a position to be successful. Last year, we delayed school start times to 8:50, and the high schools got out at 4:05. Primarily, we listened to the students who told us that was far too late for them to get out of school. They wanted to get out earlier. So the proposal for all of the secondary schools in realignment 2 is that they would go to school at 8:25, get out at 3:25. And then the elementary school would start at 7:45, get out at 2:55. One of the things we recognized, we were able to save between $6 and $9 million as a result of later start times. Because we didn't have to run as many routes. We changed the policy, but we didn't have to run as many routes. We didn't have to utilize as much gas. We didn't have to utilize as many people, and we were able to save between $6 and $9 million. Is that correct? 6 and 9? I'm sorry, 1.3. Forgive me. I like 6 better. 1.3. And the reality is we're able to take that money and reinvest in our classrooms, because now at our foundational learning centers, we have 2 educators in every class. So the ratio at those schools are about 10 to 1. The ratio at those schools are about 10 to 1. All right, let me say it again for the record. I don't want nobody to misquote me. Mr. Lay, 1.3 million was the savings. 1.3, all right. 1.6, 1.3, all right. I want to continue here. So we're looking at the start times and making those adjustments. So what that means in the area is that the middle and high school would begin at 8:25. The elementary school would begin at 7:55. all of the families who live in the attendance zone of these 6 schools will have access to transportation. All of the families. Now, if you are a family who does not live in the attendance zone, but chooses to still attend the school, that's a conversation we have to have. But all of the families who live in the attendance zone of these 6 schools will have access to transportation. And then for siblings who perhaps are going to be split as a result of having an early learning center and then the 3-5, they will ride the same bus. They will have an opportunity to ride the same bus. The bus in the morning will drop off at one site and then go to the next site and then pick up at the drop-off site in the afternoon and then head back. So siblings will still have an opportunity to ride the bus together. So we wanted to make sure we were able to provide that. And then, in addition to that, all of the families who live in the attendance zone of the 6 schools and have access to transportation will be on a straight route. There'll be no more transfer for those families. That is one of the concerns we've heard from many of our families, that they don't like their children having to ride transfer. And so we eliminated that with this phase of the realignment. And so we feel really good about the opportunity we have to have children ride a straight route to school. And what we have seen in the Glen Oaks area and the capital area is that more families are taking advantage of transportation as a result of knowing their children are going to be on a straight route. Now, one of the concerns that was mentioned in our last conversation was the academic. Come on, man. Come on up. Yeah, come on. Come on with your sign. This is the school board member with the sign, not the school board member.
I love y'all. We support you. We're going to fight for you.
Yes, sir. We have our Vice President, Cliff Lewis, is here. I want to thank him for coming out. We have Emily Sule, who is here, and we have Darius Langus, who is here. All of our school board members here this evening. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. But again, school board member got to sign that. I'm an employee of the school system. One of the concerns that was brought to my attention during the last conversation is that some of the families, some of the parents were concerned about the academic program at the school. Well, in our realignment phase 1, we created the medical corridor and the medical program in the capital area. So all the schools during the realignment in that area have the medical programming in those schools. And then when we transitioned and we went to the Glen Oaks area, all of those schools in that area have STEM themes. So for this particular area, we're looking at the creative sciences and the arts. When we look at the 6 schools on the board, not all of them had any of the magnet programs that some of the schools had. What we've decided that all of these schools are going to have the same magnet programming that they had. So Villa Del Rey and Greenbrier will have the same academic programming. So when we start thinking about the singing pirates, they're not going away. We're just hoping to expand to include the kids at Villa Del Rey, at Park Forest Elementary and Greenbrier. Has everybody caught that? Park Forest Elementary and Greenbrier. So the singing pirates are not going away. They're not going away. The academic programming at Park Forest Elementary and Greenbrier is going to be the same. The students who attend those schools are going to have access to the same program. So it's not going away. At Villa Del Rey and La Belle, the pre-K to 2 site will be here, and the 3-5 will be at La Belle. The same academic programming that exists here is going to exist at La Belle. So our students won't lose anything. And as they feed into Park Forest will have both the creative arts pathways for all of the students who attend our elementary schools in the area. And we hope that the singing pirates will one day become the singing Raiders. So that program can just transfer all the way up. And then as we go to high school, the same academic program will be available for all of our families.